The throne room of the celestial spire was a monument to fragile beauty. Its walls were woven from solidified light, and the air hummed with a subtle floral frequency meant to soothe and pacify. The queen of the stellar dominion stood at its heart. A being of such refined elegance, she seemed carved from pearl and starlight. At 26 standard cycles, she was the youngest monarch in a millennium, her authority as unquestioned as it was untested. Before her, surrounded by a half-circle of her austere advisors, stood the human. He wore a simple gray shipsuit, a stark contrast to the iridescent silks and polished biometal of the court. His project, a humble proposal for a cross-species agricultural exchange, lay dismantled by her words. A quaint notion, the queen said, her voice like wind chimes, yet cold. You bring us plans for soil and seed when we manipulate ecosystems at a genetic level. You speak of cooperation as if our technological disparity is a minor detail. It is the only detail. The human said nothing. He simply listened, his hands relaxed at his sides. An advisor, emboldened by her tone, gestured with a long-fingered hand. The Dominion does not dig in the dirt. We sculpt life. Your offering is archival, a relic. The queen allowed a faint, pitying smile. Your species shows spirit. We grant you that. But spirit is not scalability. Passion is not precision. You have traveled far to bring us this pamphlet. The gesture is noted. You may withdraw. She expected gratitude for her audience. She expected a bowed head, a deferred plea for reconsideration. These were the reactions she knew. The human did not bow. He did not plead. He looked at the queen, his gaze passing over her bejeweled diadem, her gown woven from cosmic dust, the confident, dismissive set of her mouth. He saw not a goddess of advanced civilization, but a young woman surrounded by yes-men, speaking of wonders she had never built, inheriting power she had never earned. He turned. It was not a dramatic spin, not a gesture of fury. It was a simple, decisive reorientation of his body away from the throne. He took a step, then another, his boots making soft, solid sounds on the luminous floor. He walked toward the great arched entrance, a void of mundane movement in the choreographed stillness of the court. The silence was profound. The hum of the walls seemed to stutter. No one dismissed from the queen's presence ever turned their back. Protocol was a law as fundamental as gravity. The queen's composure flickered. Human, she chimed, the word sharper now. The audience is concluded by our word, not your departure. He did not stop. He did not look back. A wave of uneasy agitation passed through the advisors. One of the guards, a tall being armored in light-shifting plate, took a step forward, but the queen raised a hand. Her curiosity, a trait she seldom exercised, was piqued by the insult. To follow him with guards would be to acknowledge his act had weight. She chose to see it as the final, confused stumble of a backward species. Let him go, she said, her voice regaining its melodic chill. His exit is a louder confession of his irrelevance than any of his words could have been. The human walked through the arches, into the transit corridor, and onto the main concourse of the spire. He moved with purpose, not haste. He reached the docking bay, where his vessel, a boxy, utilitarian craft scarred by atmospheric entries, sat among the sleek, organic shapes of Dominion shuttles. It looked like a stubborn stone among jewels. He entered the ship, sealed the hatch, and initiated the pre-launch sequence. On his console, a final diplomatic channel from the spire blinked with a message. The Dominion considers the agricultural proposal closed. Departure clearance granted. It was the last communication he would ever receive from them. The Queen, meanwhile, pushed the incident from her mind. It was a minor oddity, a footnote. The Dominion continued its grand projects, its symphony of cosmic engineering. Years passed, It began at the edges. A fringe colony world, whose biosphere had been perfectly tuned by Dominion ecosculptors, reported a strange resilience in a new batch of decorative Terran flora brought by independent traders. They were meant to be simple, vibrant curiosities. But when a local nutrient conduit failed, plunging a sector into a toxic mineral imbalance, the Dominion-engineered flora withered and died within hours. The Terran plants, however, adapted. They altered their root structure, filtered the toxins, and slowly, stubbornly, began to restore the soil. The report was buried by mid-level bureaucrats. An anomaly. Then came the Helios Drift incident. A Dominion starliner, a masterpiece of living biometal, suffered a catastrophic cascade failure in its morphic engines. Stranded in the void, its passengers waited for the elegant, specialized rescue vessels of the Dominion. But a distress call was also answered by a human bulk hauler. The massive, angular ship, devoid of beauty, locked onto the starliner with magnetic grapplers, considered brutish and archaic. It then deployed a universal repair paste, a material humans humorously called space glue, to seal the breaches. The paste hardened in the vacuum, creating an ugly, effective seal that held until proper repairs could be made. The Dominion's own rescue, hampered by compatibility protocols, arrived later. The ugliness of the solution was debated. The effectiveness was not. Whispers started. They spoke of human logistics networks that operated with a baffling, redundant robustness. Of their medical nanites, less elegant than Dominion symbiotes, but programmable to tackle thousands of novel pathogens by using a brute force library of adaptive responses. Of their power systems, often large and inefficient, but so brutally over-engineered that they could run for centuries with minimal maintenance. Queen heard these whispers in council reports. They were always framed as curiosities, as the useful quirks of a lesser but diligent species. The underlying thread, a philosophy of resilient, adaptable, and pragmatic design, was never articulated. The Dominion's worldview had no category for it. The crisis arrived without fanfare. A cosmic anomaly, a silent ripple in subspace, washed through the core systems. It was not destructive in a conventional sense. It simply reset. It returned sophisticated bioorganic and quantum-dependent systems to their base, inert states. It was a tide of universal nullification. The celestial spire went dark. The walls of light became dull crystal. The ships fell from the skies like dormant seeds. The entire Dominion, a civilization built on sublime, interconnected technologies, found itself paralyzed. Their wonders were now tombs. Their elegance was their vulnerability. Panic, a sensation the Queen had never known, tasted like metal in her mouth. In the dim emergency lighting of the spire, her advisors were silhouettes of despair. Every solution proposed was a higher-tier technology that no longer functioned. They were trying to speak a language the universe had just erased. A junior aide, her voice trembling, broke a long silence. Majesty, there are human freighters in the adjacent neutral sector. Their comms are still active. They use radio. The word was archaic. It was a stone tool. The Queen stared at her, the absurdity warring with the chilling truth. Human technology, deemed ugly, inelegant, and hopelessly physical, did not rely on delicate biolinks or quantum harmonics. It used circuits, plasteel, and electromagnetic waves. It was impervious to a reset that targeted sophistication. Contact them, the Queen said, the words ash in her mouth. The hail was answered not by a diplomat, but by a gruff logistics coordinator. The video feed showed a plain, functional bridge. In the center, seated in a command chair, was a man. His hair was shorter, his face lined by years, but the eyes were the same. It was him, the one who had walked away. He listened as the Queen, her regality frayed by desperation, explained the situation. She avoided pleas, framing it as a logical request for assistance between spacefaring entities. Her words, once so effortlessly dismissive, now felt hollow and fragile. The human was silent for a long moment after she finished. He showed no surprise, no vindication. He simply nodded. "We can help," he said, his voice calm, devoid of the melodious frequencies of her speech. "We have tugs with conventional thrusters. We have fabricator units that can produce simple components. We have pre-digital medical supplies. We can set up radio relay networks for coordination." He paused. "It will not be fast. It will not be pretty. It will be work." The Queen swallowed. "What are your terms?" "Terms are for negotiations," the human said. "This is a distress call. Our terms are the same ones we offered years ago. Cooperation." The word landed in the dead throne room with the weight of a planet. It was the same word she had belittled, the same concept she had dismissed as the province of the lesser. The first human ships that docked with the Spire were stark, gray, and angular. They brought crates of manual tools, cables, and simple generators. The humans who disembarked wore practical exosuits, not living armor. They assessed the dead systems with scanners that beeped monotonously. They spoke in short, efficient sentences. The Queen, forced to walk through her own darkened palace, watched them work. She saw them cut through beautiful, non-functional crystalline panels with plasma torches to run crude power lines. She saw them manually crank open sealed doors. She saw them apply their space glue to stabilize crumbling structures. It was all brute force and simple physics. It was all devastatingly effective. She found him in what had been the Hall of Harmony, now a dark cavern. He was overseeing the installation of a geothermal power tap, linking the